The meeting of the Community Plan Advisory Committee for the South Maui Community Plan is convening at 5:30 p.m. And we will start with a roll call. If can't hear? Okay. Can we try that again? The Community Plan Advisory Committee of the South Maui Community Plan. Still low? The Community Plan Advisory Committee of the South Maui Community Plan. Okay?
Yeah, that's good. I don't know if they can hear you, but I can hear you.
Can you hear over there? Okay. 100% better than last time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Community Plan Advisory Committee for the South Maui Community Plan is now convening at 5:31 p.m. And we will start with a roll call, if you'd be willing to call out the names. Or I can do it, if you have the list. Okay. Vice Chair Kanahele.
Present.
Tom Blackburn Rodriguez.
Here.
Tova Callender.
Present.
Everett Dowling.
Here.
Luhanani Huddleston Hafoka. Vernon Kalanikau. Mike Moran.
Here.
Cody Nemeth. Wayne Nishiki. Kyoki Feltzer. Jennifer Sullivan. Brian Ward. And myself, Rob Waltman, also here. So we have a full house today.
This was just given to us as testimony.
Oh,
Joan just handed it.
okay. Okay.
Karen.
Velina mai e nā lala o ke komike o lala a o kaiaulu no ka papa o lala no Maui hema. Velina mai no hoi e ka poe o ke keena o lala o ke kalana o Maui a me ka leholeho o Maui nei. O ko ka kuhana I ke la ka ho'ohola ane I na pahuhopo o ka papa o lala a me na I kamo kulekele a me na I kama hana e pili ana I ke kaiaulo ha e huola me ka nahona olo olo. So today's short introduction will be delivered by Jason. So are you ready? I'm sorry, Bryson. I'm sorry, Brian.
Testing. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Ward. I'm going to actually give you probably a little bit of a different introduction. The first night that we met, I gave you a little bit more of my professional background. Tonight, I wanted to share a little bit of my journey of Maui. So for me, I had the fortunate event when I was a very young teenager. We will not count how many decades ago that was. Unfortunately, my mom was quite ill, and it was her life dream to actually come to see the islands. And upon her recovery, my dad decided to bring us as a family to the beautiful islands. And so my first experience of landing on Maui was at the airport on a little puddle jumper. And I had the first pleasure in my life of ever picking up my luggage on a tarmac. Unfortunately, it took me another 15 years or so to get back to the island. This time, I actually had the fortunate event of coming with who is now my husband for his first event and journey venturing through the islands. A little bit of a different adventure. We explored the island in a different way. We found Little Beach, took many hikes, waterfalls, so not quite the family adventure, but one that was very special to us. The reason that's an important moment, not just because of the journey of our lives together, but upon my return home, sorry, it's a little personal, guys, so if I get a little emotional, my apologies. Upon returning home, I had the fortunate opportunity to talk to my dad via phone for about an hour and a half to reminisce about not only our family journey, but my most recent. Unfortunately, that was the last conversation I had with my dad, that he passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack 2 weeks later. It took another 25 years for my mom to actually have the return back to the islands, where my husband and I had the opportunity to bring her back. Unfortunately, that journey was her last journey as well. She passed away 4 years after that. I did have an older sister that joined us on our family trip, and I had the fortunate event about 7 years to bring her back, along with my husband's father, who was actually stationed on Oahu as a Marine many years ago. And in that journey, it was actually a pivotal point that unfortunately my sister passed away 6 months after that adventure. And in that time, it was the time that my husband and I were deciding to leave New York City and pack up the Big Apple, trade it in for the pineapple. And the original plan that we were actually only to be here part-time. And with my sister's passing, it brought home something very personal to me, that my core family all had the opportunity of experience this island, and unfortunately we'll never have that opportunity again. Therefore, we decided to pack our lives up, knowing that this is where we wanted to be for the rest of our lives, but we took that journey probably about 20 years earlier than we anticipated. So for me, although I was not born here, I didn't have that benefit. I had been coming to the islands for years upon years, and for me, it actually is home. It may not necessarily resonate the same way, but for me, this is where my family connection and personal life of learning a different environment, but was something that was so special to my family. And that's why I wanted to be part of this community. Again, I won't bore you with all the details, as riveting as they are, of what committees and boards I'm on, but that's why I wanted to join this committee, is I wanted to give back because I know and remember what it was when I first started coming here, and I've seen what's developed, and in some ways it's good, in other ways there's things that I'm not happy with. So I want to be part of the solution, because again, this is where my family actually resides, and on a very personal note, I've actually brought my entire family here with me, and they sit in my home, which is now their ohana as well. Thank you.
So who's next? Okay, Kyoki, excellent. So last week we didn't finish the transportation section. We barely got started. And so the way this works is that we can't just continue the next time today, because partly because it takes some time to prepare the changes that the planning department wants to make, and partly because we have invited speakers and other things on the agenda. So the current plan is that we will recover this, what we would have done last week, on December 21st, which is marked in the schedule as a catch-up day. We will have, we'll aim again for 2 breaks of 10 minutes each at 6:30 and 7:30, depending on how the engaging discussion goes. I had a question here about the meals we had. So we started off with full meals, and then last time we kind of did a radical shift to cookies and chips and apples. And I think I heard some grumbles from members of the committee, but I wonder if there's a middle ground. Anyone have opinions on the...
I think today we brought musubis, spam musubis, so I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I kind of heard, so I think that was something we thought was maybe in between, but you can let us know. Again, it's just trying to balance the amount of time that it takes for the staff to get meals, not taking away too much time from your meetings, because really they're 3 hours long. So I'm sure we can try to find a happy medium in there somewhere.
So I would suggest to just enjoy what's offered today, and then if you have suggestions for how to change in the future, just pass them on afterwards. So we have, this is primarily for the people in the audience who may want to testify. We have the following items on the agenda, and when you testify, it has to be to one of those items. You can't just testify in general. And also, if you ideally, if you can stay to the time when the particular item is going to be discussed anyway, that would be best. But if you can't, if you have to leave before that, you can testify now in advance if it's to one of these items. If you do that, you can't come back and testify again on the same item when we actually get to that point. So The items we have on the agenda are, first we're going to talk about the section 2.2, policies and actions around safe, healthy, livable communities. And we'll have presentations by the Parks Department and the County Arborist. And that's item C. And then item D is going to be discussing the goals. We currently have 5 goals specified for the plan. And then that is item D. And then item E is other committee business. So if you cannot stay and provide your testimony when we get to the item in question, is there anyone who would like to testify now on item C or item D? Yes, please go ahead.
And if the testifier could please state on the record what item they're testifying on, that would be very helpful. Thank you. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Turn it on. Sorry. I'm Tom Crowley. I'd like to testify on item D, which concerns your goals and some actions that you're going to take. And I've been aware of the South Maui plan for years, and maybe a lot of the actions don't take place because we don't have money to finance them. It came up in the last meeting that how are we going to do some of these things, because where's the money going to come from? We like to put it on the new development, but let me tell you, there's not a lot of space for new development. Most of South Maui is developed at this point, unless we're talking Mauka of the Pialani Highway. So as we move forward with the goals that we have for Makai of Pialani Highway, we're going to need money. And I brought you some testimony, some written testimony that I hope was passed out. And I want to title this Taxation Without Representation. The spreadsheet that I just handed out shows the real property taxation in South Maui. The first item on there is homeowners. It shows there's 5,001 homeowners. These are the folks that are classified in the owner-occupied tax category, and that these folks pay a total of $7 million in real property tax each year, or this past year. And that works out to $1,400 per person on average, or per homeowner on average. This past year, a new tax category came up called long-term rentals, and 660 people registered for that one, and their total came to 1.1 million, which is about $1,667 per taxpayer in that category. And then there's a tax category called apartment. An apartment at this point is really only the apartments like right over here, where it's a true apartment complex with lots and lots of units. In the past, it was individual condominium units, but it no longer is. Those fall into a different category. And there's only 91 of those, and they generated 1.2 million. So in this spreadsheet, you can see the total for residents came to $9.3 million. That's how much real property tax the residents of South Maui contributed. Then there's commercial and industrial and agriculture, and I'll go over those very quickly. Those are, our commercial businesses and industrial businesses, and there's some agricultural lands in South Maui. And in total, those categories brought in $6.2 million in total property tax. Then we get into visitor accommodations of various varieties. First are short-term rentals, of which there are 6,394 TMKs of short-term rentals. The short-term rentals in total brought in $79.8 million, or approximately $12,480 per short-term rental unit. Next is non-owner occupied, and I want you to pay close attention to this. Non-owner occupied are mostly second homes. These are homes that are occupied by their owners on occasion, part-time, that kind of thing. So non-owner occupied, there's 4,364
You're at
of them.
your 3 minutes, so could you kind of wrap up?
I'll move very quickly if I can. And generated 48 million. Hotels generated 24 million. The timeshares generated 3.5 million. Commercialized residential, which is the bed and breakfast, of which I happen to be a bed and breakfast owner, generated 300,000. Conservation, which most people think conservation means conservation land. No, it doesn't. In Maui County, it means golf courses. Golf courses are in conservation. So that's 1.1 million. But the point that I want to make here is the visitor accommodations and the visitor industry is generating $156.7 million in taxation versus $9 million for the residents. I don't see the visitor industry represented here in any way, shape, or form, and I think that they should be. And I think that on a bigger scale, when we look to Kahului and or Wailuku to send money here, we should be pointing out, hey, $200 million came from South Maui. If we have needs, if we need better roads, if we need parking lots and so forth, that should be coming back from the county. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any clarifying questions from the committee members?
Okay.
Thank you.
I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify before we actually get to the agenda items? Okay. In that case, we are ready to, let's see. There's another testifier? Okay. So is this testimony to be delivered in advance of the meeting?
Could I just summarize what I have, or I have copies?
If you're going to testify, please go to the mic.
Oh, okay.
Please introduce yourself and state what item on the agenda you're testifying for, and you will have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, my name is Elaine Molina. I summarized everything, and I'm testifying on several things, but I do have to leave. And I do have a printed copy of the information. Would that be good? Okay, sorry, it's my first time testifying, so please excuse me. I'm testifying on a lot of the tree references for shade. I'm an arborist, been in the tree industry on Maui since 1983. I know several of you from tree friends, I should say, brought us together. But we're summarizing on the shade reference and the Maui County Planting Plan as an important tool in the job that you are doing. And I do want to thank all of you. I appreciate your time as volunteers on this really important matter for Kihei and South Maui. And so what I would really like to do is just leave the copies with you. And I think that would be easier than me going on about it. Okay, thank you.
You can leave it with staff, and then we'll be sure that each member gets a copy.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for Elaine? No, thank you. Anyone else wanting to testify before we get to the agenda items? One more. Yes. So, agenda item you're speaking to.
There you are. I heard your voice. I know where you are. Hi, my name's Randy Wagner, and I'm a board member of KCA. And I made a bunch of comments for Chapter 1, but that is for December 21st, right? So I only had a few comments for Chapter 2. 2.10, which I think is the reference to the parcel adjacent to the police station up here on the highway. I think it's an ideal location to reforest with the water, the wastewater that's been treated that is being injected into the wells. I think that that should be a real focus in our community plan, that water be used there for reforestation and whatever else the development of that parcel does. But it seems like a perfect location to divert that water. 2.12, I just wanted to say thank you for putting in all the bits about the trees and the the canopy plan and the analysis of shade in Maui and in South Maui, and how important that is for every aspect, for ecology, for walkability, for climate, heat reduction, just every aspect of it is important. So thank you for putting that in, and I know Elaine probably commented on that too. And then, 3.01, is that not for now?
That would be a later meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Daniel?
Daniel?
Thank you for being here. I wanted to ask you, generally speaking, where do you think we are lacking shade in South Maui? Maybe give us a couple of specific places that you
Okay.
think there should be more shade and there isn't.
Well, specifically along all the sidewalks where there should be sidewalks, there should be shade. Because I take walks all the time in Kihei and I dash from one shaded spot to the next. To be able to do it, if it's after 9 in the morning, I have to be really careful. The other place is in all large hardscape areas, such as parking lots. And right now I'm working on a grant with Maui Green and Beautiful to educate parking lot owners on the requirement for shade and to stop topping all their trees. So I would say anywhere there's hardscape especially needs tree coverage and shade.
Can you educate us a little bit? Are there tree trimming going on that's actually destructive to the trees? Is there any certification that you have in order to do tree trimming? I noticed that in Kihei, they just kind of slash and cut. But in Wailea, they go down there and they trim the individual branches. Can you educate us on, is there a process? Is there a certification? If we put more trees in, what's the guarantee they won't be killed by bad trimming? Thank you.
Well, that's an excellent question. And it isn't just in Kihei, it's also in Wailea where they slash stuff too. Elaine has addressed that with all her comments, but there's arborists are certified and they are trained to trim properly, never more than 20% of a tree. I'm not in that field, so I don't know exactly how it should be done, but that's part of the grant that we're working on, is to do a brochure that shows how trees should be trimmed properly. It's very stunting to them if they're topped the way they are, the way you're describing, and then when the branches grow back, they're weak. But yes, that's part of the community plan, is that certified arborists are employed to manage the whole tree canopy landscape of South Maui. It's a really important aspect because we're so hot and dry here, and our trees get down into the water table so they can really grow without irrigation after they get to be a certain size. So, and it's the best filter, it's the best carbon uptake there is. So, and they need the leaves to do that. And when they keep cutting off the leaves, it's a problem.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service.
Any further testimony from the audience?
I'm Larry Stevens, and I'm here to talk about trees. I always look for win-win situations, and I think one of the reasons we don't have many trees, especially along South Kihei Road, is that it's too crowded. There's not enough room to put trees in because the parking lots butt up against the sidewalks, which butts up against the road. If we were instead to turn South Kihei Road into a one-way street, we could remove one lane, which would free up a lot of space, which we could use for sidewalks where they don't exist, or for trees, or for bus pullouts. It would generally smooth traffic along that road as well. So win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Yes, Mike?
Thanks for testifying, Larry. Good to hear from you. We have heard that proposal several times over the years about converting South Kihei Road to a one-way. And two questions arise from that. One, what direction would you prefer? It to be only a northbound road or only a southbound road? And then part two is, once you decide that, where would the alternative traffic go? Would then everything have to go up onto the highway, being there's no other alternative? Thank you.
So, first of all, I'm not a traffic expert in any stretch of the imagination, so I'm not really the person to answer that question. If it was me and I wasn't able to consult with anybody who was a traffic expert, I would probably have the road go north. Have people come in, enter at the south, and make their way north. I think that'd be the smoothest, but that's just an errant opinion. Obviously, if we send everybody up to the highway, that's not perfect. Obviously, it would be better to finish the collector road. Hopefully, we will decide that someday that we could sell a bond and use the money from the bond to do the collector road efficiently in one go, instead of doing it one linear foot every few years, as we have been doing. But that's not for me to decide.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions for the testifier?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional testimony for before the agenda items? Okay, we have another testifier.
Good evening and aloha. My name is Adele Rugg. I live here in South Maui for many years and appreciate all of you taking your time to be with us this evening. I wear many hats. I am on the KCA board, and tonight I'm Maui Green and Beautiful board. I did bring along a copy of the Maui County Planting Plan. I would like to give it to you folks and ask that you do what you need to do. Just a couple of things regarding Section 2, the policy framework. We really, really would love to see something going on Mokulele Highway. That's what I still call it. People call it Veterans Highway. We would love to see a tree path along the center of that highway. It would be easy to do because I understand there is irrigation. So that would be a goal under 2.2, section 2.01, replanting and planting of Maui Veterans Highway, trees along the bike path to create shade and beautification, and the planting of the center median with shrubs to beautify and lessen the night glare of oncoming traffic. Another thing we would like to see in section 2.14, we really, really need a division of community forestry. Maui County is blessed to have one county arborist. We need more. And that would be a wonderful gift if we could create many more county arborists. Are there any questions? Thank you for letting me testify. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions from the committee members? Keoki?
Aloha, thank you for coming tonight and testifying. In regards to the Veterans Highway, Old Mokulele Highway, if many of us remember, there was once Wili Wili along there, and it was beautiful, and it was shady, and it provided wind block for certain agricultural, on and on. Unfortunately, that particular tree had a disease or a wasp, and no more. So do you have any ideas, or
yes,
what type of species would you suggest?
Well, we would work with our arborists and the Maui Green and Beautiful people, but there are shrubs and natives that could be planted in the middle, in the median.
Sure. Yeah, good idea. To my knowledge, a lot of the native trees, they exchange a lot more as far as oxygen. I've seen talks from professors at UH and stuff like Milo, things like that. But thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further clarifying questions? We have Daniel.
Yes.
Aloha, Adele. Thank you for being here this evening. I don't know if this question is for you. You say there is irrigation in the median.
That's what I've been told. I understand that when the project was built, there were some plants there, I understand.
So
And
let
they've
me
all
ask
died.
the county, is there irrigation in the medium of that highway? Does anybody know?
I think it's a state highway.
It's a state highway, so I don't know, but it's also a state highway, so we would have to check with state DOT.
Yeah. It's true, it is a state highway, but I was just curious if there was water there.
I believe it was just temporary, just to get the grass growing, and then once the grass had stabilized, they removed it.
Thank you. Any more clarifying questions for the testifier?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional testifiers before we get to the agenda items? Okay, the public testimony at this part is closed. There will be another opportunity to testify when we actually get to the agenda items if you haven't already testified on them. So who would like to start on the public presentations and the presentations? Carla or Tim?
Hi, aloha, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. And thank you to all of you CPAC members for volunteering your time to this important project. As a supporter of long-range planning, the Parks Department also participated in the West Maui Community Plan a few years ago. We believe in long-range planning, and in our department, we've increased our own planning staff with the addition of Jen Maiden here with us tonight. As you'll see in our presentation, we're also continuing to identify and address the planning issues that affect the community's parks and facilities. This is an ongoing effort, and we continue to develop new ways of addressing the community's long-term issues. Your ideas for the community plan will be helpful to our department, and we look forward to working with you on this. I'd now like to introduce Sam Marvel, our Deputy Director, to start our presentation.
Thanks, Carla. I'd like to start by providing an overall look at the county's parks and facilities. So using this system of park types, the South Maui system can be described as shown here. There are 28 total parks in the South Maui system, of which most of those, 18, are beach parks. The system also includes the items listed there, 6 neighborhood parks, 1 pocket park, and so on. The 2 special use facilities shown on this list are the Maui Raceway Park and the Liloa Bike Trail. So another way to look at parks in South Maui is to see how much acreage is assigned to each park type. As shown in this chart, most of the county parkland is designated as special use. That's because of Maui Raceway Park, which is 222 acres. The next largest site is the undeveloped South Maui Regional Park site, where the police station is located at 150 acres. Beach parks make up the 3rd largest category, shown up there in blue, followed by community parks and then neighborhood parks. And here are several maps that show all the parks in the South Maui district. And the parks are shown in the kind of orangish red color. Looking at the map, several things stand out. What you see is that there's a real mix of park shapes, sizes, locations. The system includes a few parks that are large. Maui Raceway Park, as we discussed earlier, Kalama Park, Waipuilani, and the undeveloped site above the police station. Many of the beach parks are long and narrow. There are just a few large beach parks. And beach parks in the Wailea area tend to be narrow and deep. They're essentially parking lots with a very small amount of beach frontage. And there are relatively few neighborhood parks in residential areas. So how do residents of South Maui recreate? Where do they go and what kinds of activities do they participate in? A mail survey that in 2015 answered those questions. The top 10 activities are shown in this chart, and you can see how many of the popular activities involve the ocean. So it's kind of hard to see, but the green bar at the top represents South Maui, and the orange bar below it represents the entire county of Maui. And up at the top, the number one activity is walking, which is no surprise. It's typically at the top of participation lists across the country. When asked what sites they use, people mentioned a variety of places. The top 5 were beach parks, followed by trails, picnic areas, bike paths, and swimming pools. Next slide, please. We also had a question about the use of programs and activities that people had participated in. The top 5 were farmers markets, followed by community events, cultural events, swimming programs, and senior citizen programs. The department has also started to reframe how it provides services and why what we do is important. One of the most basic ideas is that parks are part of the county's infrastructure. They serve a valuable function, not just as open spaces, but as places where we all create memories that we hold on to throughout our lives. Parks include historical and cultural places, reminding us of who we are and where we come from, and tie us to the stories of place. Parks are also where we go to improve our health. Go to almost any park in the morning and you'll see lots of people walking to improve their health. Access to parks is an important indicator for physical and mental health. Finally, parks serve an ecological function as well, and it's something that we're starting to incorporate into the way we build new parks, especially those located by the ocean. Now I'll hand over the presentation to Jen to go over our challenges and strategies.
All right. Mahalo, Carla and Sam, and aloha CPAC members and South Maui community. It's wonderful to see you all in person after so long on the screen. So I've been involved in the community planning process for years, but this is my first time kind of on this side of the process and representing the Department of Parks and Recreation, and I'm really honored to do that and excited to be here with you all tonight talking about parks and trees, some of my favorite things. So I'm going to continue tonight with our presentation covering the challenges and strategies for parks in South Maui. First, a summary of the top critical issues facing parks in South Maui. There really is an existing and projected shortage of beach parks and neighborhood parks of adequate size to really serve our community as well as our growing population. It's also challenging to retain undeveloped park sites and improve these lands into functional parks. There are oftentimes competing uses for these lands, and developing parks takes significant planning, design, and development construction work. And as you all know, our beaches are very well loved by our residents and our visitors alike. Our visitors, as well as our CORA, which is Commercial Ocean Recreation Activities, have a lot of impact on our beaches, as well as on the experience of our residents of these parks. Managing parks with their carrying capacity and the resident experience in mind is really important. And finally, sea level rise and coastal hazards. We are already seeing impacts to our beach parks, and this is projected to get worse as we reach mid-century and beyond. So we're going to take, since this is such a critical issue, we're taking this opportunity tonight to dive into this a bit more, into sea level rise and hazards to our beach parks in South Maui over the next few slides. The department is actively working to integrate sea level rise and coastal threats into planning for beach parks. The department has been working with a consultant, Tetra Tech, for about 2 years now on a beach park vulnerability and adaptation study for all beach parks in Maui County. The study is a work in progress. The first phase is complete and there is more work to be done. There's a lot of science and analysis that has gone into this study, and I'm going to give you a very high-level summary so you can understand what went into the study and what the outcomes are to help you review the policies and actions related to beach parks and climate resilience in your draft South Maui Community Plan. As you see on the screen, there are 3 main components or steps to the study. First was an assessment of exposure and impacts of sea level rise on park assets based on 5 indicators. Second was a rating of each beach park's potential for adaptation to sea level rise based on the assessment of future conditions, and they were rated as either low, medium, or high adaptation potential. And finally, each beach park's adaptation potential was translated into an adaptation strategy, taking into account each park's individual conditions. So you can go to the next slide. That was a lot of work, 2 years of work just put onto one slide. It was complex and that made it look awfully simple. So if you're interested in diving into the methodology a bit more and the results of the study, I really encourage you to check out the executive summary and the web app, which are both available on the county website under the Department of Parks and Recreation. On your slide printout, you'll see the direct link there. The web app is a great interactive map-based dashboard where you can explore all of the beach parks and their vulnerability assessment, their adaptation potential, and their adaptation strategies. On the screen is a shot of Kamaole 3 Beach Park. It's a great tool, the web app. So countywide, most of the beach parks, about 60%, have a medium adaptation potential. 14, or about 20%, have a high adaptation potential, while almost 20% have a low adaptation potential. So that's countywide. And looking at adaptation potential by district, it can be quite revealing. We see quite a difference across the districts. We've got Southwest, Central, East, and Molokai. You can see that the South Maui district has the most beach parks countywide, and the great majority of them have a medium or high adaptation potential. So this provides really a great opportunity to do proactive planning for the beach parks in South Maui, and really the community plan can play a role in making that happen. So considering the adaptation potential and the conditions at each of the beach parks in South Maui, these are the adaptation strategies recommended. So first is maintain shoreline access only. This is recommended for beach parks in highly developed areas where the beach loss is significant and the beach is often quite narrow. Maintaining access to the shoreline is still important in these areas, and it really may be the only option at this time. So the parks that are included in this are Palauea, Polo, Wailea, Kalepolepo, Ulua, Mokapu, and McKenna Landing. Next is maintain facilities and monitor conditions. This is recommended for 6 parks in South Maui. These parks have relatively high adaptation potential and can be maintained as is and conditions monitored over time. These include Kamaole Point, Kenaleo Park, the Veterans, the VFW Hall, and the parking lots for Charlie Young, Keavakapu, and Kamaole 1 and 2. Assess park viability based on future access is recommended for 5 beach parks in South Maui due to their dependence on adaptation planning for the highways and roadways that access these parks. Close coordination with the state DOT, County Department of Public Works, and other agencies is paramount for planning for the future of these beach parks. And these include Charlie Young, Kamaole 1 and 2, Kaonaulu, and Maipoina. Restore and preserve dunes and wetlands focuses on nature-based solutions for parks with the potential to support dune and wetland restoration and preservation. 4 parks are candidates for this strategy in South Maui. They're Kamaole 3, Po'olenalena, Maluaka, and Waipualani. Retreat, acquire land, and relocate structures. This strategy focuses on maintaining park uses by removing and relocating the structures and acquiring additional land away from the threat of sea level rise. This strategy is recommended for 1 park, for Haycraft in Ma'alaya. And finally, fortify, raise shoreline revetment. This strategy is for parks that have existing shoreline revetments. There are only 3 parks county-wide, and 1 being in South Maui, Kalama Park. For this, a variety of technical studies will be needed to determine if this, the feasibility of this strategy or if other alternatives should be considered. So I know that was a lot of information. And again, I recommend if this is of interest to you and you want to dive in, there's great information online in the web app, and you really can get interactive with it. So through the process to assess the vulnerability and develop the adaptation strategies, 3 conclusions have really risen to the top. First is that this is certainly not just a parks problem. Many other departments need to be engaged and other entities need to be involved in planning and implementing park adaptation strategies. From, as I was talking about, state DOT, public works, there's utilities, there's water, a lot. It's not just parks. This is going to take a coordinated effort. Secondly, this is really complex and challenging process. So really the time to plan and budget is probably years ago, but it is now. So, and then thirdly, that involving the community is paramount in this process. Okay, coming back to your task at hand, the community plan. So the Department of Parks and Rec has worked with the Long Range Division on the analysis of issues, the proposed goals, and recommended policies and actions. We do have one recommendation for a change to one of the actions regarding community gardens, but for the most part, the plan does a really good job of outlining the park district's major issues. Key policies and actions we recommend for South Maui include prepare plans that incorporate coastal threats and impacts on beach parks, coordinate with county departments and state agencies on adaptation planning for infrastructure, especially roads that access parks, promote low-impact development practices while improving and developing parks and facilities and nature-based solutions for beach parks, protect public safety by removing park structures and features that are damaged or exposed by severe coastal flooding and other events, and incorporate cultural protocols when developing plans for parks. Limit construction of facilities exposed to 3.2 feet of sea level rise. Acquire additional land for new or expanded beach parks and neighborhood parks. Maintain the acreage of existing developed and undeveloped park sites. And finally, support an adequate level of funding for parks maintenance and development. So thank you for hearing our presentation tonight, and there will be lots of resources to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you. Do we have Tim with the, I think we'll wait until we get the other presentation before we start discussion, so if that's okay. Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maui is my home. Apparently, we've done a shitty job in taking care of our parks. So you guys have any recommendations where we should get bike parks or lease land? Do you have a park plan? Do you have a CIP budget? How many acres are you short by?
Thank you for your questions. So yes, we do have a CIP budget that we work on, a 6-year plan. And right now we're working more on deferred maintenance. And we're looking at acquisition of property. We have a district plan, and we have David Yamashita who would be best to describe how that planning process is working.
As you're taking your seat, you may know about organized sports. How many requests do we have in our community about having our children in this community involved in sports?
Okay, that's a Carla question.
So we do a triannual permitting process. And in this last triannual process, we took over 100 applications for youth organized sports leagues. And we accommodate that throughout the county.
And our families that have children are suffering because they can't participate in any organized sports. True? Yes or no?
We have not heard that there are families who are suffering. We also do provide, as a department, youth programming. We just recently started that up during the pandemic. We had to put a hold on that. So we provided virtual programming, and our staff did their own virtual programs. So we are very short-staffed as well in our recreation series. But we do try our best. In South Maui, we provide a basketball program. There's a volleyball program. They do a fishing program. So they try and do a lot of youth programming through our department, as well as with our partners who are like the Little League, ASO, HISA, and those types of Bronco, organizations that partner with our department to provide the resources that we don't have for our youth leagues, as well as swimming. There's MAGSA who does swimming.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's really embarrassing as a resident living here in Maui to see that our kids are being treated this way. We want them to be good human beings, and yet we treat them worse and lack the space for them to participate. So they should be a priority.
We can make, that is our option, to make that a priority in our community plan. We're setting the direction. We can prioritize that. I'd like to hear Tim, if Tim is ready, and then we can have a discussion, because I think a lot of the questions will be overlapping between parks and trees.
Thank you. Aloha committee members. Thank you for volunteering and all your time and effort. And thank you everybody from the community who showed up to testify. My name's Tim Griffith. I am the county arborist. I oversee pretty much all the trees in the county, which includes formal street trees, unmaintained county rights-of-way, parks, police stations, fire stations, and Kaunoa retirement facilities on all 3 islands. Currently, as far as street trees go, I focus on that. We have 2 mechanisms for planting new street trees. The first are code required for subdivisions that are bigger than 4 houses. So any new subdivision, I do get the landscape plans as part of the construction plans that are submitted for permitting. So I do review those plans for the street tree element, and those trees get planted as part of the code requirement. Secondly, we do get new trees planted as part of capital improvement projects. Currently, we have one up in Kahului right now. It's a complete street project, new streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and trees as well. So we'll be getting 36 new trees up there. This is a picture of Pi'ilani Village 1, all the shower trees that the county does maintain. They were code required as part of this subdivision. Appropriate for this space? No, obviously not. But I mean, they provide great shade, shade the sidewalk, shade the street, which helps reduce the heat island effect, helps increase the longevity of the asphalt. It'll just be a lot longer before crews have to come back in and redo the asphalt. Since these trees are a little big for their location, that we are going to do a CIP project here. It's in the early design phase because the trees are lifting the sidewalk, lifting the street, lifting the curbs. I will be working with the engineers for this project. Our biggest concern is definitely we want to keep as many of these trees as we can and at the same time facilitate the repairs. So what my suggestion is going to be when I work with the engineers, since on-street parking is not an issue, and you can definitely see that by this photo, I think there's 1 car in the entire block, is to create bump outs adjacent to the trees, actually go into the roadway, move the curb out into the street adjacent to each tree, and that'll, the biggest thing will be that new bump out will actually encompass a majority of the damage the tree is causing. So these trees are fairly mature, and once this repair is made, it shouldn't have to be done again. And this will also, a part of the project where we are missing trees or trees were either died or removed illegally, create bump outs there as well and plant new trees. As far as the future street trees, the Metropolitan Planning Organization actually got a grant here recently, and a part of that worked with the county and the state in doing a street tree inventory. Doing a tree inventory is very important, similar to somebody who owned a car lot. They'd want to know what cars are in their inventory. If they've got, hundreds and hundreds of red four-door sedans, they definitely don't want to, order more red four-door sedans. Same thing goes for a street tree inventory. It definitely tells a story, starting with, what is the majority of the age of our trees? Do we have really young trees where we're going to have to be focusing on routine maintenance over the coming years? Or do we have a very mature tree inventory where we need to be thinking ahead to budget going towards removals and then replacement trees? So this inventory, when it comes to planting, the story we really want to look at is what do we have out there? We definitely don't want to have too many of any one species of trees. Back in the 50s, up on the mainland, we had a blight come in. It's a fungus called Dutch elm disease. And all these communities that just were heavily planted with American elms completely lost all their trees. So you can imagine if in this picture, if these were all elm trees and all that shade, all the softening that these trees provided were completely obliterated. And in about 30 years, Dutch elm disease wiped out close to 80 million trees. So you can imagine if we're heavy on one type of tree and something comes in, it would decimate the community forest. Right now on this island we do have rapid ohia death. So we have to be aware of that and realize, all right, we can't be leaning heavy on planting that tree in case we do get a very heavy outbreak. Also for planting, we have to keep climate change in mind. First on planting trees to help slow climate change, but we also have to look ahead to the future when things do get warmer, things get hotter, a lot less rain. We have to look to species of trees that are really tough, that are propagated and cultivated to being able to withstand all this heat and then all this reflective heat from sidewalks and asphalt. That's all I have.
Thank you. Wayne.
Sir, I don't want to hear any excuses. Are you the only arborist in the county of Maui?
Yes.
Have you ever asked for more warm bodies?
That's in the process.
In your year, in the time that you've been an arborist, how many trees have you planted?
Excuse me, point of order, Wayne. Yes.
What is the proper procedure to ask? What is the proper procedure to ask a question? May we just speak out, or do we address you? Can you tell me how the meeting is going to work?
Yes, please request to be recognized, and I'll give you the.
Tom, you got a complaint?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to give everyone the chance to absorb and answer questions and ask questions. So I would, at this point, we've heard I believe we've heard all the presentations from Parks and Arborists, yes. So is there anyone from the audience who has testimony on this item who has not testified previously today on this item?
Aloha, can you hear me? Yes. I just have a few comments, things to consider.
Could you say your name and...
Pardon?
Could you say your name, please?
Oh, Ellen McKinley. I understand that long ago, and maybe still somewhere in the background, that there is an idea to develop pedestrian pathways and maybe bicycle path from Kealia to Keavakapu. And I believe some of that is the Coastal Heritage Trail. I think that some of the land is currently in process of being transferred from the state to the county around Waipuilani Park, south of there, working with the DLNR, Seiko Mashita. And I think this would be a fantastic asset if sea level rise won't interfere. I think that would be just a wonderful thing to pursue. They're in the process of surveying the land. I think there's 24 acres right now in process. Maybe parks could be consulted about what they know about this. For trees, I appreciate the comments from the arborist regarding making a priority for drought-tolerant species. I think that maybe an additional action could be considered to just overall, when new developments go in, to minimize landscaping that's going to require much water. I think the drought is here to stay, and maybe less grass. There are places in South Maui where people camp, and we need to either allow camping or enforce the non-camping. And if we're going to allow camping, I think we need to provide trash cans and porta potties because the environment is being degraded. Sidewalks, bike paths, and walking paths really need to come into place. I know that they've been in prior plans. And just overall, I'd love to see those be a priority. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Wayne?
Carla, if you look at page 39 to 32.
I think this is not a clarifying question for the testifier. Let's give the testifiers a chance first, and then we'll discuss.
Is there any reason why we're not getting any?
Are there rules by which this meeting is run, or maybe we just pick up the microphone and begin talking at any time?
No, at this time we're giving the testifiers the chance to speak, and then if you have a clarifying question for the testifier, you can ask that. And when the testifiers are done, then we'll have our discussion.
I don't appreciate Tom interrupting. Can I ask a question?
If it's a question to the testifier.
Carla.
Not to Carla, to the testifier.
On the government beach reserve, what are we doing about the lands fronting the Maui sunset?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. You've ruled on how we do this.
Yes.
Are we going to proceed according to the chair's ruling?
Yes, so we're going to finish the testifiers first, and then we'll ask our own questions of our speakers. So are there any clarifying questions for the testifier? Not for Carla, for the testifier. Okay, no, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience who has not testified before on this item but would like to testify on this item? Okay, so I'm calling the public testimony closed for this item. And now, so we could take a break. It is past 6:30. I'm just worried that if we don't take a break, then if we take a break, then we'll be keeping our speakers here for a long time, and we won't get to our item. So, what's the feeling of the members? Do you want to take a break now? Okay, 10-minute break. Daniel's suggestion was use more gavel. Could committee members please have a seat?
Oh, look at Daniel, get some fruit. And look, Daniel. That side of the table is going to live another 10 years.
Okay, so thank you to the Parks Department and the Arborist Committee for giving us those presentations. And we've had testimony from the audience, and I'll open up to the committee members for questions to our presenters. Yes, go ahead, Everett.
Thank you. Sam, is there a ideal metric in terms of beach area, a parking stall per square footage of beach area, or certain number of parking stalls per acre of beach area? Is there like an ideal target or?
Thanks. That's a really great question. I don't know about an ideal number. I know there's a required number based on the use per code, depending on what facilities are in the park. And it's definitely something that we're definitely taking a harder look at as far as where the high demand areas are, and because there's certain parks where there's never any available parking, and there's some where there's excess. But so
it seems like some of our parks have a lot of parking stalls, and they're overcrowded. And other parks have a lot of space and not too many people there, but no parking stalls. And I was just ideally, it'd be great to kind of level things out and even it out.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, and it's something that, as we, sort of doing an inventory, and that's one of our projects now, is to inventory what we have, to sort of be more systematic about the design of our parking lots, our parks in general, based on what we need. So it's something we can look at developing in the future.
Thank you. In terms of policy number 5 in on the presentation, I think it was policy action, the very last page, last slide, the maintenance funding. Is there the same thing? Is there a maintenance budget per acre, and how does that compare here in South Maui versus the other parts of the island?
That's also a great question, and something that we could easily calculate. I don't have the numbers right in front of me at the moment, but it's something we could pretty easily calculate based on our budget and break that down.
Thank you. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Kyoki, do you have a question?
Yeah, real quick for parks. So in the draft plan, there's mention in the North Kihei Maui area of a possible park area in the future. Is there any talks of where that might be? I know it's difficult because that whole area has receding shorelines and limited space, but any inclination of where that might be?
Thanks for the question. I am not aware of any site at the moment. I'd have to defer that to possibly Carla would know more.
Okay, mahalo.
So one thing that I wonder about is the new areas in North Kihei, like Kaivahine, and there's going to be more there too, which I think are terribly underserved with parks. And I know there are a lot of families with children there, and they could use those more than anyone. And a lot of it is affordable housing, but they should not be penalized for living in affordable housing. They should have parks too. Is that part of your prioritization? Is giving underserved areas more parks?
Thanks for the question. Typically as part of the process, whenever there's a development, we work with the developer on the dedication of park space. It's a different process for some of the affordable housing, but we typically always have a conversation, and it always comes for our review when these developments are being planned. And most of the developers are open to these discussions, so it's always something that we're discussing with the developers.
I just want to point out, though, that affordable housing developers, those who are very good, like Ikaika, who built the Kaivahina, they are really cutting costs as much as they can to provide housing that people can afford, and it's kind of unfair to ask them to provide a park in addition. It seems like that's something maybe the county should help with.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I think that might be a broader issue than maybe than just parks. We definitely support parks distributed fairly throughout the community, but I think it's a countywide effort that extends a little bit beyond just our jurisdiction.
Thank you. And I just have one little testimony I wanted to give. There are a lot of people were talking in the beginning about trees being just chopped off, disfigured, and injured instead of trimmed them properly. My subdivision, first 20 years, we had companies come in, and that's pretty much what they did. They would just chop off the tops of the trees. But about 2 years ago, we got in touch with Tim and got our subdivision in the county's plan, and now our trees are beautiful and healthy and well maintained. So I would highly encourage those who talk to Tim. Vernon?
This for the RBS. So if we look from above, like Google, like today, and you look down, you can see more structures than trees in South Maui. That's a view that, so like for me, I don't know how much more we can add, even with development, wherever space we get left to develop in South Maui, and then adding trees to those projects. That's pretty much where we can probably add trees, because if you look down by Maui Schooner, Luanakai, that area, so you see what the trees do to the sidewalks and the roadways. So I guess, we try to do our best to limit more maintenance or trying to get more funding down the road, how to repair. So, not plant the tree and then we got to go figure out how to get funding to fix the road and the sidewalk. We don't want to do that. I'm sure you guys don't want to do that. And also the choice of trees. So a lot of the trees we see today never was around in the 70s and even in the 60s. So try to find that trees that that works out with the salt breeze that we gotta live with and all that. And also those root system, they gonna find the brackish water, the salt water eventually, because we close to the ocean. So that's probably gonna impact a lot of these trees that it's gonna die or remove, or more funding to remove the trees. So I think we talked about this before in public discussions that try find trees that agree to where we at. We in Kulakai, or also known as Kihei, because in one point of time we all know this was wetlands, and the kiawe trees, they've been around longer than us. So if they were still around, get plenty shade. You just got to get the one that no more the thorns, right? But and since I'm talking about the kiawe trees, there's the Manakai project down there that it's going to be used for paid parking. When those kiawe trees old, they even cut them down. Yeah, I never liked that.
I didn't know about that either.
Yeah, but they should have kept the big ones for shade and take the smaller ones out for parking. So too much of this side action that's probably out of by the time you guys find out, it's too late. So I think we all trying to maka'ala the best we can in the community to bring it out and address that. Mahalo.
Do you want to comment on that, Tim?
Yeah. Thank you, Vernon. Trees in an urban environment, there's no perfect tree. There's never enough room. Private property doesn't want to give up their private property to increase the right of way. And I mean, you could plant a tree that's going to grow to 8 feet tall. It's not going to get into the side sewer. It's not going to break up the sidewalk or street, but it's also not going to provide any shade. So having street trees it's just going to, you got to find the happy median, just know that eventually it's going to break the sidewalk. It may get into the street, but we just deal with that. That's the price to pay, to have these trees. It's like you own a home, you're going to have to replace the roof, you're going to have to replace the hot water heater, You don't buy a house and not have any expense that comes with it. Same with street trees. You plant trees, you're going to have to maintain them, prune them so they're not dropping branches. They're in front of the schooner, those nice big monkey pods. I think back in 2011, they took out the concrete sidewalk and put asphalt just so it's a little more flexible. And it lasted until year before last. And we actually went in, and I went in with our crews. We pulled up some sections that were really getting lifted and did some root pruning. You can prune roots like you can prune the canopy. Did some root pruning and relaid the asphalt. So hopefully, we get another 10 years out of it before we have to touch it. And we've got the great shade, they're big, but there's going to be a price to pay, and it's the cost of having these nice trees.
Thank you. Have Cody first and then Mike.
I just kind of wanted to add on to what Vernon was saying too on that subject. I always kind of feel that we using these trees for shade or whatnot, and kind of like what you're talking about, our trees have a lot of uses and a lot of reasoning than to be just used for shade, and we're just kind of just plucking them here and there. They bring oxygen, they bring life, they bring our rains, and I really would like to look at those kinds of things when we're talking about trees. When we're talking about implementing trees, I know we're doing it for a community service, but at the same time, we also need to acknowledge the purpose that comes with trees, which is kind of like what you're talking about in a way. Also, to address the Parks Department, I wanted to also bring awareness to our waterways. I know we're talking about sea level rise and erosion and things like that. The one thing I don't hear enough of is our mulivais, the water that is flowing underneath. And being that we're actually actively working in an environment with a mulivai, I notice a lot of saturation in the ground. I've noticed a lot of interesting things that have been happening in North Kihei coming down to Waihulikai. And one of them is in Kalapolepo, the water is undermining the entire structure over there of the shoreline. There's underwater. There's a spring that is undermining that whole area. For those of you who have been to Kalapolepo recently, You can kind of see near where the canoes are. It's not what it usually looks like. It's all kind of misshapen, right? I seen that in North Kihei also by Suras, undermining of certain areas, even down by Kulani Hakoi, by Koa Lagoon condos. And I'm fearing that there's something happening underneath there with all this water that we have that might become a big issue before we realize it is. Yeah, maybe some kind of sinkhole action, I don't know. But I've caught video footage in the past of water basically just coming out of those areas and pouring out to the ocean. When I look at our goals too, I want to see water management in there as well, managing our mulivai. I know nowadays they've been channelized and turned into these retention areas, but historically, when you look a lot of the old photos from like the 40s and the 60s, they were lagoons and mulivais, and you can see like after every photo that I looked at, the waterway is completely changed. Yeah. So one photo it'll move this way. Maybe in the 60s, the water is completely moving this way, you know, and the lagoon kind of changes as well. So I think that we should concentrate also on managing our waterways, managing our mulivai. I don't know if you guys know, but we have o'opu in our mulivais, which is endemic only to Hawaii. And the o'opu that we have in our mulivai don't have the suckers on them. So they're made to stay in those mulivai. Yeah. We also have opai. And so with all that life in those areas, when we're thinking about flood water, you know, where a lot of the homes that are getting inundated with flood water, they try to channel everything into those mulivais. But I witnessed hundreds of fish trying to breathe the air for oxygen because they're just swimming in complete mud, you know? And we pulled a big o'opu out of there that was just in mud. So there has to be some kind of medium, and there has to be acknowledgement of our waterways. And I would love to help moving in the future and how to better care for our mulivais and monitor maybe what's going on underneath with our water.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers who can address that?
I just want to mention that we do talk a lot about water. There's a whole section on water. So I know it gets kind of difficult to try to separate out the two, but do know there is a whole section on water. So parks, you know, is tonight, and all the other kind of the comments that are coming up about water will be addressed later. So they're kind of tied, but rest assured, we're going to get there.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that they're really, really tied.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. First, for the arborist, when you were addressing those that beautiful grove we have on South Kihei Road, those monkey pod trees, not the current administration, the outgoing administration, but before that, there were 2 attempts to remove all those trees for, in my opinion, they were wild claims that it was like the trees were the enemy of everything. And fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and were able to retain all the trees. And just what you're addressing, that was one of the major problems. Well, they're prohibiting ADA compliant sidewalk. And as you mentioned, well, a quick fix was put in to just replace the concrete with the asphalt, and we still have all those trees there without a problem. But my question to you is, when this was being addressed, I was told, well, one of the issues that we can do now, we can't do it with the trees that are existing, but when we plant new trees, we have to put in something called root guards, which will control where the roots go so that they don't go into the wrong direction. Is that something that, is that something feasible to do, is put in these so-called root guards? And if so, is that part of our plan as we go forward with planting new trees?
Yes, these root guards, they're called root barrier. It's heavy gauge plastic, usually about 24 inches deep. That's the most basic type of root barrier. They are called out on plans. Every new street tree has it along the curb and along the back edge of the sidewalk, and it extends 10 feet either side of the tree. There are other root barriers that are more mesh and have built-in almost herbicide in it, that once the roots hit it, it repels the roots to the side. And root barrier does help. I mean, there's a whole list of factors, you know, when planting. A lot of times, if it's a construction site, you know, everything's compacted so heavy. You know, they may bring in a few inches of topsoil from who knows where. They plant the tree, they put in the root barrier. Well, now the roots can't go down. The water can't penetrate. So now you do get roots on the surface. They can, you know, jump over the top. Sometimes if they do go underneath the root barrier and they're not getting watered properly, if there is compaction, not getting enough deep saturated water, they'll come right back up, right up on the other side of the root barrier. So it does help with planting new trees. I do get questions, like when we do sidewalk repair, I'll supervise and call out for some root pruning. They say, well, do we have to put root barrier back in? I go, no, we cut the root's gone. It's a mature tree, but it does help with the newly planted trees.
Thank you, that's most helpful. And then turning to parks, with our large community park, we saw David gave a presentation maybe 5-6 years ago about that park, and some of the input we see here in your presentations tonight was the participation. And it seems from a resident's point of view, non-professional, that the park is so slow in developing. And we were advised that one of the problems was when the plan was made, it was based on a different department, Public Works, getting the North-South Collector Road in there. And now that we see that segment of the North-South Collector Road is like a mystery for when, at least a decade away. So is that stopped progress in that community park? Because if you don't have the road for access, has that inhibited progress in that progression in that park?
Thanks. Great question. And the answer is no. Our process continues. The project's in design right now. We have a consultant working on that now. But you know, the development of that road is essential to the plan. And right now, it would need to be in place before we did a full build out of the park. Because right now, as you know, the park only has one way in and one way out, and that doesn't work when it's fully developed. It just would become a bottleneck there. So we need another way out. So if it does look like that Collector Road is going to be delayed like you said, a decade, we'd have to look at a design solution on our end to make it work in the interim, which we can do, but we're not at that point yet. We're still, it just takes time, the funding cycles, and we just put $20 million into the new gym that's right on that site. We kind of have to spread it around to different areas. So it's a process. We are working on it, and feel free to contact me directly. I work pretty closely on that project, and I can get you more information about where we're at with the design.
Thank you, Sam, and I appreciate your positive attitude that if the other department is not going to be able to help us, we're going to find another way to do it. So it's much appreciated. And my last question for Parks turns back to what Rob was addressing, that the community parks, and when that Kawahini project, that truly affordable rental project was put in, of course, it backs onto that, what often is called the old neglected park, which sits right behind it. And we had hopes that when that affordable project went in, and yes, they were saddled with, they had to repave that entire street. They had to put in a water tank to increase pressure for the neighborhood, not for their development, but they did that. But then they were, as a nonprofit, putting in an affordable housing project. We felt they did their part, but we were hoping that something could be done for that little park, which does have tennis courts in there. But when these young families went in, we were hoping to get some sort of a small playground put in there, which again to residents seems like, well, gee, this is a relatively small expense, and it would fit right in with that. But of course, nothing has happened. Is there anything in the plans for doing something like that up at that Ali Pialani Park?
Thanks. Another good question. I have an answer for you too. We actually do have design funding this year that's part of our countywide park playgrounds program. So that's included in there. So we'll be in the process of designing that this year, and we're requesting construction funds in the next fiscal year's budget. And hopefully, if everything goes smoothly with permitting, we could break ground next year on that and finish it up and put a little playground and ADA access from the parking lot there. And we'll include some type of shade that's in the languaging for it. And we have some kind of really rough preliminary designs on it, but again, you can reach out to me, I can show you what we have, but it's in the plan.
Excellent. Nice to finish with good news like that, Sam. Thank you.
Daniel?
I'd like to thank the county arborist and Parks and Recreation for being with us tonight, willing to be with us all the way until we turn off the lights and lock the doors. I'd like to ask the county arborist if he could give me his phone number, so in case we have a tree emergency, we can call you.
I'll give you my card here in a second, unless everybody wants it.
I think everybody would like to have your number. It's a public number, right?
It is. It's 270-7469. That's my desk number.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then for Parks and Recreation, I see a lot of great policies and goals for parks. Is that because Department of the Parks is the most important department in the county of Maui? Carla nodded, so that's good enough for me, confirming that. Also, we're talking about the goal of safe and healthy, livable communities for all. And speaking about parks, how can we make our parks safer? Often hear people talk about how they don't feel safe in our parks right now in Kihei. especially Kalama Park, Kamaholi Park. They're afraid of the people that are staying in the park late at night, maybe even camping out in the parks. There have been reports of people camping in the parks after hours. How can we make our parks safer for our community members so they can go in there and feel like they don't have to worry about their security?
Thank you, and that's a very great question. Right now, we have 15 park security officer funded positions, and we have 4 of them that are filled. So we're challenged with that security component of having a presence in the park. We are looking into being able to fill those positions creatively. We're doing a one-day recruitment and trying to get more part-time positions on board so that they can be out there and educating all of our users on the park rules, being able to be there at night to help and assist, working alongside with the Department of Housing and Human Concerns and the Homeless Division, as well as the Maui Police Department. And that's currently what our status is and what we're looking into. Also, just crime prevention, better lighting, bringing in more activity into the parks in the evenings. I remember working with the Kalama Park, that KPAT program, where they did walking at night and, encouraging the community to partner with us and help us in providing that type of activity. We built the walkways and sidewalks within the park, and, we'd be willing to get that type of program together as well.
And just a quick follow-up question. Besides calling the non-emergency Maui Police Department number, is there another number the public can call if they see something that looks illegal happening in the park?
Yes, absolutely. So within, our park security officers have jurisdiction within park property, so it has to be within the park property. And for the times that we staff them, the number is 808-270-8070. So as long as we have staffing, our park security officers, all 4 of them, will take requests for services, and they'd be happy to help and assist.
Yes, Tom?
Carla, that's what you just said raises an interesting point. As long as we have staffing. And before I do that, by the way, Mr. Chairman, if I might recognize our new council member, Tom Cook. Thank you for being in the audience, and thank you for listening to us. Appreciate that. But do you have adequate funding for what you had said in your plan is adequate funding for staffing, operations, and equipment? And then you talked about key policies and actions. So my question to you is, how much will it cost to implement the key policies and actions you're proposing?
That's a really great question, and that's something that we'll have to come back with as far as quantifying those numbers. We work really hard every fiscal year and every budget session to ensure that we have funding to be able to adequately maintain and operate our parks. Unfortunately, we don't get all of the money that we ask for, but we try really hard. We just acquired more property, not in South Maui, but from the A&B dedication. And so it was a commitment to our department that we said we're going to submit a budget amendment. And it passed. So we were able to get funding so that we can properly maintain and operate those additional acres of land. So we're going to continue. And, we've been advocating for this for 4 years now, is that we need to have proper funding to be able to maintain and operate all of our parklands. We have 161 parks countywide, over 2,600 acres of developed parkland. And, thank you to Vernon and Cody and our cultural partners who take on these undeveloped parklands and become partnerships with us to be able to provide that type of maintenance and care that these special properties deserve.
Thank you, Carla. When do you think, or would you be able to provide to this committee a dollar figure for how much it will cost to implement your key policies and actions?
Yeah, maybe we probably need about a month to get that all together.
Okay, so will you be submitting that to the committee?
If it's your request, yes.
If Mr. Chairman, may I ask if you follow up on that? I think it's a good thing for when we make decisions to ask how much will they cost and where will we get the money from? That's where the rubber hits the road. And thank you for doing that hard work. I appreciate it. And a follow-up question. In your view, are you receiving adequate funding from the council for what you need to do for the parks? You had mentioned that you're doing a lot of deferred maintenance right now. Are you receiving the amount of money you need, and how much money do you need each year from the county in order to maintain what you feel is an adequate park system?
So thank you for that question. For the operations and maintenance, right now we have currently over a $35 million budget. And we utilize that for all of the properties that I mentioned. Our deferred maintenance is coming out of capital improvement. And we have gotten funding through the council. We just were in front of council today, BFED committee, to assist us in a budget amendment for additional funding, because a lot of our projects, as everyone knows, the cost is just increased a lot for material, labor, and such. So, we estimate, our consultants do a really good job of estimating how much things are going to cost. And then after we go out to bid, we find that we are over budget. And so we then go back and we ask and request for it. And we've been successful in getting that type of additional funding for our larger deferred maintenance projects. For example, we have the War Memorial Gymnasium that we're looking at redoing, and what we're trying to implement as far as our larger gymnasiums and getting them into a more shelter-ready sites, so that when we do have emergencies, they can withstand. The War Memorial Gym, after its renovation, will withstand the Category 3 hurricane. South Maui Gym we were fortunate that was, brand new, and we were able to implement and design for that type of hardening. So we'll be trying to do that within all of the districts. So not only improving it for, athletic or, our community use, but as well as for in times of emergencies when we really need to have that area for sheltering, and then after, post event types of sheltering.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. You indicate in your planning a 3.2 foot rise in sea level. When was that figure arrived at, and is it still relevant?
That's the county benchmark that the county has instructed, I guess, all the departments to use as a standard measure.
And is it based on science or based on funding?
Oh, it's based on science. Right. I mean, these are projections that we're not the only ones working on this. The state's working on it. So we essentially, for our vulnerability assessment, use the same guidelines and metrics that the state is using. So it's 3.2. And so in our study, we use 2 feet above sea level. We use 3.2 right now. And again, it's, as far as I know, it's based on science. It's not about money.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, and I wanted to ask Carl, I think, and first of all, thank you for all being here tonight. Very professional presentation. Thank you very much. When the affordable housing comes up, oftentimes developers will ask for certain exemptions. One of the things I see coming up is not to have to pay the park assessment fee. Is that impacting your budget, and what is your opinion of not having that park assessment fee paid? And thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, as far as the exemption from park assessment fees, that's codified. That's in the Maui County Code, 1816-320 that we follow to assess, to do all the park assessments. So, I mean, that part of it is, essentially out of our control. It's a complicated issue, and I'm not sure if I can speak on behalf of the department as far as my opinion about it. But more funding is always better for us, and it would allow us to do more. But it's the exemptions are there for a good reason, and to allow those projects to proceed and give a benefit to the community without as much burden.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up. May I ask, how is the lack of payment of park assessment fees affecting your ability to do the job that you want to do? Thank you. In other words, is it cutting into your budget?
That's a good question. I'd have to answer. I don't think the impacts are severe. We have to look at it and see, what the amount would be if we were able to assess those projects. But my feeling is that it's not heavily impacting our ability to do what we need to do. I would say I'll add to that a little bit and say I think funding is somewhat less of an issue than, as Carla mentioned earlier, just staffing and having the people to properly manage all of these projects and things that we do, and filling the positions is challenging. And it's something that we're interviewing all the time. Every week we have interviews to try to get people on board to manage all these wonderful projects we have. So I think that's really a bigger challenge.
Leroy, you had a question?
Yes, I have one comment and one question. So I just want to say thank you to the Parks and Recreation, in particular, specifically South Maui Parks and Rec. I think Cody and the team do a wonderful job. And I work out of the Kendall Recreation Complex in one of the buildings. And I find that that park area is one of the most beautiful park areas, my favorite place. Born and raised in Kihei, and I like that not too many people come there. We like everybody to pass it, leave it for the kids. But I think they do a really great job in considering, and you just said, limited staffing and, limited budget and so forth. But I think we have to recognize that they're doing the best that they can. We can always do better in every, area of our jobs that we do and so forth. But I just wanted to recognize them and say thank you very much for what they do. Thank you for the sports over the years. My kids grew up in the South Maui Parks and Recreation, playing sports and the parks and everything. So I think we have to be, maybe more supportive and do our part to ensure that our kids, are in a safe and comfortable space. And I think that, obviously you guys would do more if you could. And I think that's why you do what you do. So again, I just wanted to say mahalo for doing, everything that you guys can. And I look forward to things getting, better for our community as we grow. So mahalo for that. And I did have one question, or just looking actually for a comment from maybe you, Carla, or whomever, page 36. And I think this is under goals 2.26. Support the creation of public campgrounds within the region. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think someone also testified on behalf of that as well, and we do support campgrounds. We know how important it is for our families, especially after coming out of a pandemic and everyone wanting to be outdoors. So that is something we're looking at. It's all over, in all of the districts. We're also looking, because of staffing concerns and the fact that campgrounds really need to be managed for it to be successful, probably partnering with another organization or having it go out as a concession is something that we would look towards, so that you can have someone there on site checking people in, making sure it's properly maintained. If there's not proper infrastructure and we have to do porta potties or such, that they're properly maintained, trash is picked up. So that would be the goal. When we do develop these campgrounds, that we find that solution to make sure that everyone's safe there and it's properly maintained by either concessioning it out or partnering with some other agencies.
Thank you for that, because I just wanted some clarification, because at first I wasn't very supportive of it, because I was just thinking it would just become where people would just live and so forth. But I know you guys had a plan, because Kihei, we used to have a campground back in the 70s. My auntie was one of the official first campgrounds on Walakahau, Gladys, my grandpa George Akina's sister, and so forth. So I feel much better that you had said that. I just want to make sure that that was something that we would be able to realistically do, and when we get there, that it would be maintained properly. So thank you very much for that.
Do you have a question, Kyogen?
Oh yeah, just quick question for parks. Right now, park security, are they fully staffed or are they understaffed?
So we
There's
have
vacancies.
Yeah, we have adequate funding. Adequate funded positions. We just aren't able to fill them. So we have a park security supervisor that's filled. We have a park security officer 2 who oversees our night staff, like a working supervisor that's filled, and we have 4 park security officer 1s. We have 11 vacancies.
That's island-wide, 11 vacancies.
Yes,
Yeah.
we don't have any park security officer funded positions on Lanai, but we have one on Molokai that's also vacant. We're interviewing actually this week for that.
Okay, thank you. And then just one comment. I heard you say something about, I know it's out of district, but War Memorial Gym plans to renovate. So kudos on that, because I know years ago there was talks of tearing it down. And for me, it's personal because I have 2 uncles on that memorial. So mahalo. Thank you.
Any more questions, or Daniel? So the next thing is that we'll be actually getting into the policies. So.
Yeah, quick questions. Where would you even put a campground in South Maui? The second question is, how much you pay your park security guys?
So that's part of our planning process, right? When we start looking at implementation of new types of activities or areas that we want to develop. And so the campground idea would have to definitely go through that planning process. We don't have that idea right now, but if it's going to work somewhere and we can bring that, I think we get asked for camping all the time, and we only have Papala'ua in Lahaina, and it's it's a porta potty. It's beautiful. But there's no infrastructure there. There's trash cans and porta potties. So again, that's going to be part of our planning process in looking, again, if there is an area that we can designate as a campground. And again, like I mentioned before, if we can successfully manage it to ensure that it's a safe and enjoyable experience for whoever goes there. Sorry, can you repeat your second question?
What's a pay scale for park
pay
security?
scale, that's right. Sorry, I don't have that amount on me right now. They need to be repriced. We're working again with the union and the Department of Personnel Services in trying to see of ways, either retention bonuses or something. It's just a process to get that pay scale changed. And so, it's in the process. We're trying to work on it. In the interim, it's creating maybe part-time positions. We do a lot of job fairs. We just had the county had a virtual job fair today, and we've heard that a lot of our retired people want a part-time job. So we may want to be creative and get part-time work.
Thank you. Is it time for another short break before we start on the policies? I was just informed that we do have the Parks Department and Tim here for the evening, so we can continue to discuss with them after the break, if that's okay. Do you want to do that? And then we'll get right into the policies. Okay, 10-minute break. Meeting come to order. Please find your seats. So the two big things we have on our plate today are the policies around Goal 2.2 and the actions around 2.2. We also have an agenda item to discuss the goals themselves, but I have a feeling we're not going to get that far. We may have to postpone that to next time. So focus on the policies, and I recommend, and I'll ask if there are any objections, to using the latest revision to the Planning Department's proposal that was sent out at about 1 o'clock today. Has everyone received that? That's the one, the redlined one. Does everyone have that in front of them? The redlined version? Okay. Now, the next question is, I tried last time to do it item by item, but there was some people felt that I would just take too long a time. On the other hand, I can't just say, does anyone have any opinions on this section? Because that's pretty big, and I think we'd risk missing some important things. So what we'll do is we'll group them. I'll do them by, let's say, 5 at a time. I'll ask if anyone has suggestions or wants to change anything or discuss anything 5 at a time, and if not, then we'll just go on to the next one. Are there any objections to doing it that way? Okay, so let's give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to start off including the one that was crossed out because someone may feel that it should not be crossed out. So policies 2.2.1 through the old 2.2.5, the first 5 policies. Does anyone have anything to that they'd like to change or remove or add in that context, in that section? Brian has a question. Yes.
I would like to propose for 2.2 I guess the original was 4, that it's to strive to provide parks within a 10-minute walk.
Are you looking at the policies or the actions?
Policies.
Page 36, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And this was 2.2.5. This is, okay, this is provide parks?
Correct. So
Okay.
strive to provide parks.
Strive to provide, oh, I see, okay, you're suggesting to add strive to, okay. So, yeah, this is the policy section as opposed to the action section, so, yeah. Cody?
For 2.23.3, I was wondering if we could add parks should include informational placards referencing to like historical or cultural use or historical references, cultural use.
Karen?
There is a policy like that in the Vahi Kapuna section of the plan, the goal 2.4, I think it is. Also, just so you know, if you say strive to provide parks, it is not going like how everyone was talking about how Kawahine did not get any parks in it. Striving doesn't do much.
Yeah, my sense as well is that we should have as strong language as possible, because otherwise we'll get very little out of this. Jennifer?
Do you want to bring it up? Page 35, if we could go back, we skipped over that. Lehuab had the testimony to add a sentence and a phrase. So page 35. She handed it out to us tonight. Did everybody get that?
So it was, yeah, page 35 of that section. So I handed it out. I don't know if it was a recommendation. It's not quite a testimony per se, but, and I don't know if a motion needs to be made. I'm not quite sure if I could be told what needs to be done. I think everybody has it. Yeah.
So everybody have that in front of them?
Am I supposed to read it?
Yeah.
No need. Okay.
Yeah, I think it might as well. It's not that much. If you mind reading your additions.
Okay. So I like to make a recommendation to change the first sentence to the following: a home is the foundation of stability and security for an individual or family. A home should be a safe haven, a place to live in peace, offering a sense of dignity and an opportunity to feel like you belong to the community you live in. So that's my recommendation. And then I do have a second one if we're going to proceed with the next recommendation to add in something.
I think we might as well just treat the page as a whole, since we'll either adopt the whole page.
And so going on to the, I guess the next sentence, starting out with, or paragraph per se, while South Maui's tourism industry has developed through much of the region, amenities made available to locals have remained stagnant. I would like to include, and the culture connection is not as significant as it should be. I'd like to recognize that. That's it.
Tom?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we need a motion to accept the recommendations?
We could either have a motion, or if there are no objections, we could just adopt it and move a little quicker. So if no one is expressing any differences of opinion on this, then
by consensus? Can we adopt it by consensus?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I do have one question. If you would, Lehu, would you be acceptable to, after the word a, before the word home, to delete a and insert the words an affordable home? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I think all homes should be safe havens, not just affordable homes. Everett.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of this section we talk about affordable housing, and I really strongly believe that we need affordable housing, but I also believe we need housing of every price range. And I feel like we're squeezing our middle class out of Maui. You look at Kihei, the new projects in Kihei, and they're affordable, and I applaud that. I'm really happy that we're building affordable housing throughout the community, but I don't see a whole lot of housing of other types. And I worry that we're going to end up with affordable housing that satisfies the housing demands of 52% of our population, but we really need market housing too. So, and I'll be bringing that up as we get further into this tonight.
So this section is really not about what type of housing we need. As described, this is about a home is the foundation of stability, a home should be a safe haven. So I think all homes should be that, not just affordable homes.
Mike, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I might comment. The use of the broad term and affordable reaches all income levels. There is no designation of 100% and below and that, what have you. I share that concern that we may be overlooking the middle class or people. You know, when I was a kid, my parents struggled to pay a $72 a month house note, okay? But they bought the house and then they moved up, and that's what people do. So my suggestion of using the language "and affordable" does not preclude any group on Maui. Thank you.
So are you, go ahead, Tova.
Just weighing in on this issue, I like the original wording that Lehua has provided as the edit. Home as a concept for wellness, not as a structure for how we're thinking about housing in general. So I prefer it as it was written.
So Tom, I appreciate that, expounding on that, but I would have to I probably agree with what Tova had said, and though affordable is extremely important, it's in every other area. So I like to stick with my original recommendation, but again, I agree with you. So, but we can stick with the original. That would be great.
Mr. Chairman, I would concede to the wisdom of my friend and withdraw my suggestion.
Thank you. Are there any objections to adopting the text of this page, is it 35, as amended as proposed by Lehua? I find we have adopted this page. Thank you. Going back to, sorry, Daniel?
Brian made a suggestion that he liked, and then there were a few comments. Did we dispose of his suggestion, and how did we dispose of it?
There was no motion on the floor, so you switched the conversation to a different topic. If you'd like to make a motion about the 5 policies that you were discussing.
I haven't heard a motion made on anything yet.
That was just accepted by consensus, but you can move on as a committee if you would like.
Yeah, so I'm just curious of how we're handling things. People make suggestions, and you have to have consensus for it to be accepted, or no opposition. I mean, it seems so much easier when it's not clear to me how we're handling people's suggestions or recommendations. It's a little blurry.
So we don't need to vote on everything. If there's consensus, we can pass it. It's just quicker. So if there are no objections, then it means it passes. So back to the first 5 policies. So there was a proposal there to strive to provide parks. And I would recommend against that for several reasons, but primarily because the stronger language, the more likely this plan will actually take effect. It may still not, but at least there's more likelihood. And more discussion on that topic of strive to provide parks. Tova.
Just that I concur with the suggestion that we try to keep the language as strong as possible if parks are something that we feel like is important. Let's not water it down, because exceptions can be made down the line, so let's not put a loophole in the very beginning.
So you just like to propose that change, that addition? Okay. Okay, let's, are there any other changes that people would like to make in these first five policies? Tova.
Thanks, Rob. Sorry, just so I'm clear, are we saying the first 5 original or the first 5 as redlined?
The first 5 as redlined.
Okay.
We're using that as our base.
Except for you were saying to keep 2.2 in there, yeah? Was that the recommendation, that you're keeping 2.2?
No, their baseline is following the red line, which means 2.2.2 goes away, unless someone wants to keep it, in which case we'll discuss that. Okay, so I'll take it as a motion to add the words strive to at the beginning of the old 2.2.5, provide parks, to strive to provide parks. And yes, is there a motion? Okay, there's no motion. Okay, no motion, okay. In that case, are there any objections to adopting the the old five first items, which means removing the old second item? It's kind of complicated. Down to provide parks within, so adopt that whole section. Any objections? Okay, I find that we have adopted those. And let's move on to the next 5, which, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which starts with support the creation of public campgrounds and goes to include native trees. Cody?
I have a recommendation for 2.210. Are we over there? Or are we still on 2.2.9?
2.2.
2.2.10.
Is that the one that starts with include native trees?
Include native trees, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if we could put, after greenways, allow native seed banks to return.
Could you say the whole sentence with including the change?
Include native trees and flora that are appropriate for the microclimate in the parks, along streets, trails, and greenways, and allow seed banks to return throughout the community to provide shade, beauty, and reduce sediment runoff.
Any discussion?
And the whole manao on that is that, we're always implementing plants, native plants into these parks. A lot of times, a lot of those native plants are still there, like underneath. A lot of times you just got to clear and allow them to come up. So.
Is the intention also that this would provide for preserving the local genetics? In other words, you have a seed bank, so you're preserving the genetics of the plants that have grown there for a long time, rather than bringing others or taking them elsewhere. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
May we accept that recommendation by consensus?
We have not. We need to discuss. I'm waiting for some discussion on it, and then also on anything else in this set of 5 principles or policies.
Thank you.
Okay. Not hearing anyone. Okay, Tova, you have something to say about these 5?
Yes. While I really like the intent of that inclusion, what I'm muddling through here is sometimes the way to access the native seed bank is just to water, or as you said, just scrape the soil and then water. Since this is a policy that's going to guide land use, could that approach be applied in a way that worked against our goals? if they didn't do it right. Let's say it's an area where there was already, if they said, no, I'm just allowing the native seed bank here. I've just scraped and I'm walking away. I've done my bit because that's what was in the policy. I don't know if that's the way it would be bound, but I guess I'm wondering, is there a way to tighten up the words so we make sure that the intent is actually the delivery of the genetics that are endemic to the area? I don't know. I might be off base here. I just don't want to create another way that things wouldn't be done right.
Maybe allow and monitor native seed banks to return.
I think I understand exactly what you're trying to get at, which is we're not just going to put out some new plants and then we have some new plants. We're trying to create a self-sustaining chain of life of plants which have a mo'okua, how they have a history and they'll continue to maintain themselves. Is that right?
Right. Because when I look at reducing sediment runoff, a lot of the plants in this area, they naturally do that already. And so maybe if there is zones, we could create zones where we try to see what kind of, I don't know how to put that in words, but allow and monitor native seed banks to return, maybe.
I like the idea. I don't know if maybe Karen has an idea for how to express that.
Could we say to encourage seed banks to perpetuate? So instead of just allowing, it's more of an active verb.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. So we'll go with along streets, trails, and greenways, and encouraging seed banks to grow.
How about encouraging the establishment of native seed banks? How about encourage the establishment of native seed banks?
All right, so along streets, trails, and greenways, and the encouragement of native seed banks along. Sorry, what did you say again?
Encourage the establishment of native seed banks throughout the community.
Yeah, throughout the community.
Karen, since you're taking notes, would you mind reading up that whole policy as it would sound?
Include native trees and flora that are appropriate for the microclimate in parks, along streets, trails, and greenways, and encourage the establishment of, encourage native seed banks to grow. Encourage the establishment of native seed banks. Sorry, I was in the middle of rewriting what you had said. So let me do that again. Include native trees and flora that are appropriate for the microclimate in parks, along streets, trails, and greenways, and encourage the establishment of native seed banks throughout the community to provide shade, beauty, and reduce sediment runoff.
Mahalo.
Any more discussion about these 5 policies? Daniel.
2.2.9, support the preservation of the Kihei boat ramp. I don't think we have to do that. Just kidding. And adjacent undeveloped area as valuable assets to the region. Okay. The northern portion of the property, including the dryland forest and paths, must maintain its open space and undeveloped character. There is no dryland forest north of the boat ramp. You have a Kihei forest and you have buffalo grass, but what you may have is a dryland habitat, but not a forest. So I would scratch forests and put in habitat. And hopefully you'll have some more native plants growing in there besides buffalo grass and Kihei trees. So that's...
So are you actually suggesting to remove the part about the Kihei boat ramp?
No, just the where it says dryland forest.
Okay.
Replace forest with habitat, including a dryland habitat. Habitats are, in many ways, more important than native plants because you can't have a native plant without a habitat. So they're critical resources.
Everybody clear on that? Changing dryland forests to dryland habitats. Or habitat, I guess, dryland habitat. Okay, so looking at these 5, let's see. Starting with support the creation of public campgrounds and ending with include native trees with the addition proposed by Cody and that Karen read for the include native trees one. Are there any objections to adopting them with those changes? Okay, I find we've adopted those 5, and we can move on to the next 5, which start with use Green Street's principles, 2, 3, 4, and ends with support the development of pedestrian-oriented. Wayne.
2214. I want to change the language to read, public paths must remain open for connectivity and shall not be gated. Period.
Thank you.
I need a second.
It doesn't need to be a motion if there's no controversy around it. I don't think that's controversial.
But can you repeat it, because I did not catch the language.
Pardon me?
Can Wayne repeat himself? I did not write it down clearly.
Karen, we shall substitute may and use shall not be gated. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I learned this language from writing laws. And anytime you allow someone to speculate, may or and use the word shall, you don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, stronger language is better. Everett?
Same section, 2.214, the first sentence. I suggest that we strike require new development and redevelopment projects to incorporate and replace encourage the development of interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths throughout the community. My reason for doing that is I would like to see a bikeway all the way down to Big Beach. I would like to see bikeways all along the north-south collector road. And I think if we say encourage the development of interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths throughout the community.
Okay, I see. So the idea is rather than restricting it to within a project,
right?
It's throughout the community. Okay. Did you catch that, Karen? Would you mind reading it back? With both changes.
I will say that this is more of an action than a policy. It's saying something you want the county to do, whereas this is requiring developers to allow that connection to happen. And that's the reason for the language, but I will read it back how it is proposed, which I believe it said, encourage the development of interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths through the project, and connect to existing greenways and multi-use paths if possible.
Instead of project throughout the community.
Okay, throughout the community, and connect to existing greenways and multi-use paths if possible.
Right.
Public paths must remain open for connectivity and shall not be gated.
Correct.
Tola.
My apologies if I'm slow on the uptake, but I didn't get how that wasn't diluting the direction to require that. I think, Everett, you were providing the clarity on you didn't want the language to be this strong because it would limit.
Instead of just projects, I think it should be, instead of just focusing on new development and redevelopment, I think it should be throughout the community. I think it should be on the North-South Collector Road. I think right now there's no bikeway to Big Beach. I think we should be encouraging this throughout the community, including to the new high school. I mean, just.
Thanks for clarifying. I think originally when I read through these, I was wondering whether there was an opportunity to combine the original 2.2.7, which is now 2.2.6 on the red line, with 2.2.14, because one is, and maybe there is a reason, and I defer to the planning department to keep those separate, because one is directed for one user and one is directed for another. But my thinking was in the 2.2. Originally 7, that captured that broader public desire. Yes, no, yes, maybe, yeah.
2.2. Formally 7 is more about protecting the greenways that are Malka and Mackay so that we can, so they're developed for community use. This is about when this policy is about when developments come in for approval, that they have to include a greenway in their project so that that connectivity will be something that's put into projects. If it just says encourage, that's something that we can do for the county, but for developers it will be, okay, you encouraged me. That's how the language does work.
So with that clarification, I like the stronger language. So for discussion.
I think that did clarify. I mean, I liked the way you described it initially, Everett, but as Karen explains, I think it does make more sense to be a requirement on the project developer. You're saying the project developer has to do this, and that the paths that they develop should connect to existing greenways and multi-use pathways. So this is addressing a different, very specific aspect, which I think is important as a policy.
I hear you. I disagree, but I hear you.
So is the only change to change project to community, or did I miss another change there too?
Yes, I mean, my purpose is just basically try to create a community where people can get on a bike and they can, there are sidewalks and they can walk and get around the community. And I think the public greenways, if you look at a subdivision, there's really no room for a greenway. It's just not, you have sidewalks in communities, but you really don't have greenways in a subdivision. If it's a 10-lot subdivision, you're not going to have a greenway. So my focus is on trying to create a community where people can get around on a bike and they can, kids can go to the school and they can go to they can ride down to Big Beach, and not just kids, but people just out for recreation.
Can I suggest creating a policy for the county to develop a greenway plan for South Maui? I think that would be a more effective way of approaching that.
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder?
Developing an action item for the county to develop a greenway plan, which if you could give us some time for language, that was just me making it up out loud.
I think that makes sense, but there are actually two different issues here. One is about requirements on a project versus cross-project policies and plans. And the other one is about the ability, I think, which is Everett is saying, of a project to provide greenways. Tova?
And I noticed it's missing. There was all of this language given in the policy section and then nothing in the action for actually doing it. So I like that suggestion.
Wayne.
Mr. Chairman, is the language that Karen used going to be used to create a greenway plan? Is that what was substituting 2214? And is it 2211, Karen? Can you give us clarification?
The language for 2.2.14 would stay the same, and there would be a separate action item added. And after you guys approve this, you guys are done with these policies for the night. Congratulations.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, who's asking?
A member of the audience asked me a question I do not know the answer to. I believe our public testimony is closed.
Yes.
Is that correct? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that is, I agree with Everett's goal, and I think that if it's not in an action, we should express it in an action. I thought I had seen that, but maybe not. That is a very important goal. As a matter of fact, when I was first asked to join the board of the Kihei Community Association, and they asked me what I wanted to work on, I said that's one of the things I really want to work on. is a network of walkways and bikeways where people could walk and run through all of Kihei, including Mauka, the highway. So my proposal would be to, as Karen suggests, to keep the policy language as it is, but with Wayne's suggestion, and then come back with an action that spells out the connected network of walkways and greenways.
I just actually looked through the plan really quick, and there is action 1.05, which is plan and complete a South Maui Greenway multi-use path system linking all of South Maui and including numerous east-west segments, and then it lists some segments.
So which page is that on?
Oh, it's actually 1.05. It's in the full plan, which is why I didn't have it in front of me. So it's in the section we would have gone over last week.
Oh, okay, it's in the transportation part, right. I thought I had seen that somewhere. Okay. So again, we're looking at this at the 5 item policies from use green streets, 1, 2, 3, 4, down to support the development of pedestrian-oriented. And I think we have agreement on changing the may not to shall not be gated, but we have some disagreement on the changing the rest of 2214. So I'll ask you to make a motion if you would like to make that change. Yes, Jennifer?
Just a quick comment. So back to, if you want to go back, if Karen was suggesting for 2.2.14 to remain with the wording of require new development, and Everett said a lot of developments, there's just clearly not the space to create a greenway and multi-use paths. So as a developer, if you go in and you want to develop something, but you can't because you just don't have the space, how does that word require affect that process? And should we just simply change the word to encourage? Because of that simple reason, not every development can have those aspects.
For places that truly do not have the space, there would probably be an exception. For other places, the word require would be a requirement, whereas the word encourage really is just, hey buddy, I would like you to do this. Oh, you don't want to? We encouraged you. I mean, it just depends on how strongly you feel about this. If you actually want it, put require. If you just want to encourage it, that is up to your body to decide.
I think it comes down to what's, in a small subdivision, all right? I mean, let's take Kamiole Heights, which we developed underneath the Kamiole Elementary School. That is too small of a project for a greenway. It's just, it has sidewalks, and the sidewalks, lead to the school, and it leads to the north-south collector road, a section of which we built. But you can't have a greenway in that project. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, so there are some projects, large projects, greenways make total sense. But in small projects, it's just not practical. It's just not, you provide sidewalks, and but greenways are it's just not practical. And all it does is it hinders the development of housing.
If we were to retain the word require, could we put some language around something around where feasible? So that it does open up that flexibility that if it's just flat out not feasible, the developer's not going to look at the requirements of the policies and say, oops, I can't do anything. So I'm not going to potentially entertain it. At least putting in where feasible, it gives a little bit of flexibility to that developer to say that they might be able to say, hey, I can't, or I could.
I think that would work. I mean, developers we want to do the right thing. We live in the community, we want to do the right thing. But when you say require, it just basically, there's the risk that just kills a project, just kills housing.
Should I take that as a proposal to add, incorporate interconnected public greenways and multi-use paths throughout the project where feasible? Tova?
A clarifying question. Is greenway so strictly defined that it is a very clear can, no can line? Or is that another place where there's wiggle room? You know, like in this example, there are sidewalks. Can there be a designated bike path and a few extra trees and it's called a greenway and therefore could happen? Or is it some predetermined size that makes it limiting in this way?
They've developed greenways in very limited space in other areas. It depends on what is available to develop as a greenway. There is also exceptions that are given to affordable housing.
I mean, my sense of a greenway is, in general, would be exactly that, just someplace where you could walk and bike and there's some trees. And of course, it could be much bigger too. It could include other types of transportation as well, but I don't think that the term itself requires that more than that. So at this point, since we have different ideas and there's no consensus, I'll entertain a motion.
I second the motion. Your suggestion.
Who made the motion? Oh, this is for where feasible. Okay, so the motion is, you're making a motion to add throughout the project where feasible.
I move to make a motion to add where feasible.
Second.
And seconded by Everett. And this is separate from the may not be gated, because I think there's consensus around that. So we're only discussing the motion to add where feasible. Throughout the project where feasible. Any more discussion around that? Wayne?
Just so that there's no speculation, if you use the word required, the person making that decision on Greenway can either not enforce it and said because there's no law that says, no policy that says you can't speculate. I don't think, as Karen stated, there have been instances where the stronger language should be followed. There's no speculation. If you guys want it, say it. That's what your vote is.
I am generally in favor of stronger language, but not where it's not possible to implement. Everett.
I can only think of one greenway in South Maui. The only greenway I can think of in South Maui is in the high-tech park, going up the high-tech park. That's the only greenway I can think of in South Maui. I can think of sidewalks, I can think of bike trails, but the only true greenway I can think of is in the high-tech park.
I think Liloa from Waipuilani to Pi'ikea as well is also a greenway. So any more discussion on the motion? Tova?
Just last point. Since we have learned from the planning department that the where reasonable factor is factored in during the review process to some degree and exemptions are provided, I'm still in favor of not diluting the language within the policy. A follow-up question perhaps for planning. I'm not a fast enough reader to see if it was in here in the old plan, but I know that this notion of walkable, bikeable communities with greenways has been talked about forever and a day. Why did it not happen last time? Was there language missing that made it required? And might that inform our decisions going forward?
Are we ready to go to a vote on this motion? Okay. So the motion is to add the words where feasible after throughout the project. So throughout the project where feasible. And that's the only change we're voting on with this motion. I'd ask those in favor to say hey, aye and raise your hand. Yeah. And those against? Thank you. I find the motion passes. The number is 22.14. 22. Oh, it was eight ayes, 4 noes, and then I'm not voting as chair. Motion carries. And then this second part of that, I believe there's no objection to changing may not be gated to shall not be gated. Any objections to making that change? I find we've made that change. Okay, with those changes, can we adopt from use green streets down to support the development of pedestrian-oriented, those 5 policies? Any objections? Daniel?
Yeah, I voted against the change. That's one no. No.
Okay, so so are there changes that you'd like to make before we adopt these 5?
Well, I voted against the change to 22.14. That's in the first 5, right? So if you're going to put them all together and as a package, then I'm voting against it.
Okay. So should we vote one by one on these then, or discuss them one by one? Okay. So we'll look at this one that starts with use green streets principles. Are there any objections to adopting it as it's formulated on page 37? Nope, I find that passes. Next one starts with require new development and redevelopment projects to include shade trees. Any objections? I find that passes. Require new development, redevelopment, and county projects to abide by 2.2.13. Any objections to adopting this as written? I find that carries. And then 2.2.14 with the 2 changes that were, one change was adopted by consensus and the other one by vote. I guess we should vote on this since there is some disagreement. So would someone make a motion to adopt 2.2.14 with the 2 changes that were made? Pardon?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt 2.2.14 with those 2 changes. That is, where feasible, and then also shall not be gated. And those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. We need a second, sorry. Second. Because there's objection to adopting the whole item. We voted on individual changes to it, but not whether to adopt the whole thing. Is there a second? Okay. Yeah, Brian seconds. All those in favor of adopting 2.2.14 with those 2 changes, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Seven ayes. Those opposed? 3, 4. So there must be one more who is not voting. Those who are abstaining. So that can't be. We haven't lost anyone yet, have we? Have we gone on so long? Okay, one more time. Those in favor with those two changes, please raise your hand. 8. Okay, good. That's better. And those opposed? 4. Okay, and I'm not voting as chair. So I find that has been 2.2.1.4, 2.2.14 has been adopted with those two changes. And finally, 2.2.15, support the development of pedestrian-oriented. Can we adopt that as written? Any objections?
Point of order?
Yes. Yes.
I thought we were only going up to 2.2.14. I think we stop at 2.214.
We're looking at the 5 policies, starting with use green streets and ending at support the development of.
Chair, I think
Yes.
it was in our schedule that we were going to go up to the former 14. I think that might be what Daniel's referring to.
It's in your schedule, but it is agendized as the whole chapter, so you can adopt
we can do whatever
this
we want.
if you would like to do that. If that's okay.
So, any objections to adopting 2.2.15 as written? Okay, I find that passes. Okay, it is, I'm sorry, Daniel? Objecting, okay. So, do you have a motion to, do you have something you'd like to change in that, or just want to reject the whole policy?
I didn't read it. I stopped at 2.214. That was our homework was. I haven't looked at that one. I haven't thought about it, so I'm either not going to vote or I'm objecting. So I'm checking.
So we have other items left here, so we could leave that for next time. It's 8:45, so we're kind of work on overtime right now. This one starts to get into the housing part anyway, whereas the earlier ones are more about recreation and parks, although there's some overlap. So I propose that we adjourn and resume with 2.2.16 next time. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten into the actions corresponding to this, but sorry, 2.2.15, yes.
It's, just to clarify, we have to start off with the 2.215.
2.215,
Yes.
yes.
Mr. Chair, point of personal privilege before we adjourn.
Pardon me?
Personal privilege before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
First of all, it's a great meeting. Thank you very much. I want to say that in the beginning. What I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, is that with the coming mayoral transition, I believe we should provide a clean slate for the incoming mayor and allow him to appoint to the advisory committee a member that reflects his views of the future of South Maui. It has been an honor to serve on the committee. I'm proud of the staff and my fellow committee members. Please accept my resignation from the committee effective November 17th, 2022, to provide a clean slate for the new mayor to appoint someone to the committee that reflects his views and his hopes for the county. Thank you.
I think it's going to be a while before the new mayor is in office and able to make that kind of an appointment. So it'd be a shame to have a gap in presence. Would you be willing to remain until the new mayor is in office and able to make an appointment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that, but my resignation is effective tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know. And I have a feeling that it's going to be the current mayor that's going to have to appoint at least for the time being, because the new mayor hasn't taken office yet. But,
I have
okay.
a question.
Yes.
Is that going to be okay for us to continue with 12, not 13? Karen, we can do that, just so everybody is clear on that.
You guys have quorum.
Quorum,
You
okay.
can go down to 8 and still be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.